This is Matt with Whispered Review, and I hope you're doing well. Today we're going to take a look at Die Hard. Obviously, as I've said before, in discussing this today, I might be giving away some things you don't want to know if you haven't seen it yet. So, if you have not seen it and would not like parts of the movie spoiled, please go ahead and pause the video, watch this movie, and then come on back and listen to my review. With that out of the way, let's go ahead and get started. So, Die Hard was originally created in 1988. It was directed by John McTiernan. It was written by Roderick Thorpe, Jeb Stewart, and stars Bruce Willis, Alan Rickman. And that's pretty much about it. There are a lot of side characters, but for the most part, as is true with most Die Hard movies, it's Bruce Willis and the nemesis, the antagonist, and in this case is Alan Rickman as Hans Gruber, and of course, Bruce Willis plays John McClane. According to Rotten Tomatoes, it has a viewer rating of 94%, and has a critic rating of 92%. If you go over to IMDb, they give it a rating of 8.2 out of 10 stars. So, at this point, let's talk about my overall feelings of it. I think it's a great movie, especially for its time. You can watch it today, and it's still very relevant, very entertaining, and kind of follows what we expect out of action movies today, right? So this non-stop, heart-pounding but suspenseful thriller that is gritty yet true to life. It's not too goofy, it's not too over the top. The characters are believable for the most part, which is not true of some of the later Die Hard movies in the franchise, but for this particular one, and for starting off the series, it really is about this average guy who gets caught in this crappy situation, and as in the words of Liam Neeson, the skills to get out of it. And with that said, though, you still think that he could die. You still are unsure of what's going to happen. So it really is a fantastic movie. The action, although there's a lot of it, is not necessarily over the top. The explosions are realistic. They're not these Jerry Bruckheimer over-the-top, unbelievable effects that require a ton of CGI. Now, that's not to say that what happens in this is realistic per se, but it's believable. You could get drawn into it. You do get drawn into it and believe that if things transpired this way and somebody like Bruce Willis happened to be around, it could happen. Now, with that said, I would say that there's one part of the movie that really does bug me, and that's the police. They play this sort of comic relief, but also the sort of comedic role of the stupid clown role, where you are set up to believe that they are incompetent, that they don't know what they're doing, that they are fumbling idiots, that they are caricatures of a bad police force, which I understand its purpose, right? So the idea is the worse they are, the better John McClane looks. Why do you need a police force when you have somebody like John McClane? So I get that. It makes sense. But that said, if I were a police officer, I would take offense to the way they're portrayed. These guys in real life are experts for the most part. They may not know how to handle a terrorist situation, but they're not idiots. They're not incompetent. So with all that being said, I do acknowledge no movie is perfect, and it certainly is a smaller issue when you look at the overall success of the film. But it does take me out of the movie when I do watch it. So fortunately, John McClane and Hans Gruber take up most of the film. So in that sense, it's really not something that stands out all too much. It's also kind of funny to see Alan Rickman in this film because I'm a millennial. I'm on the late end of the millennial, but I'm still technically millennial. And for me, I most know Alan Rickman from Harry Potter. So to see him in this role is kind of interesting because you can see where his portrayal of Hans Gruber is kind of present in some of the work he did in Harry Potter. So it was neat to see him younger. Although I did notice in this, and I don't know if it's just a matter of the way that they stylized the movie, but he's got gray hair, and he's looked a bit older in this, and so you don't get the sense that he is a young guy. You get the sense that he's your middle-aged guy who is a terrorist, but he's not some young hotshot looking to take over the world. He is a very, very skilled thief, and one of the things I found that I wish they had emphasized more was the plot. The underlying plot line is actually really good. When you talk about the strategy of the terrorists, right? So they didn't go in to just cause mayhem. They were thieves. They wanted, I think it was about $600 something million. And what's really interesting is that at the end of the movie, you learn that their way out was to fake their own death because they knew that there was no way they could get out if they thought they were alive. So that's very quickly why they blow the roof. That's why they need the C4, and that's why in the underground garage they've got the fake ambulance. Is so that way, or it's not really an ambulance. I'm not sure what the exact vehicle was, but it's the getaway van. But it's a van that's carrying their dead bodies. So they very, very briefly touch on it, and then just mostly focus on the action and the interaction between Bruce Willis and Hans Gruber. And I get that, but it was a really well thought out strategy. And in a time when a lot of strategies are kind of stupid or nonsensical, this was actually an interesting one, and I wish that they had played or put a little bit more attention on to that, just because it was well thought out. But that said, obviously the underlying plot, right, is that Bruce Willis comes to surprise his at this time his wife, although they are quasi or arguably separated, but still his wife and his children. And it's funny because they're not oil and vinegar. They are he and his wife. His wife is played by Bonnie Bedelia. She and John McClane are not yin and yang. They actually are both kind of yin yang or yang yang. They're very similar. They're both very strong-willed. They have strong personalities, and they are strong leaders. And so it's because of that that they have conflict. And you can tell that right when he gets into town and gets to the tower, when very shortly after they see each other and he surprises her, they start arguing about, what's their definition of marriage. And it's interesting because neither of them was looking for a conflict. They just can't help but both try and be the alpha dog. So, again, they portrayed these characters and this idea of being a couple really, really well, and I love their portrayal because it's honest, it is heartfelt, and you can see that they're both in pain, and they so many people use it as a baseline for a myriad of other genre movies. This isn't just a thriller. This is a comedy. In some sense, it's got a little bit of romance in there and a love story. It is an action movie. It's a really good movie, and I recommend that everybody see it. In my other reviews, I talk about if I was looking forward to a sequel. I think the people, when it first came out, people were looking forward to a sequel. Obviously, the second iteration did not do as well, but the third film did extremely well. After the third film, though, you really saw it start to decline in quality. The fourth and the fifth film they lose the authenticity. They lose the sense that John McClane is your average guy. The action becomes very, it's kind of cliche, but Jerry Bruckheimer-ish. It's over the top. It's not believable. And that's a real shame, because part of the magic of this movie is that it's believable, that the action is believable, that John McClane is your average guy who just gets caught in these crappy situations. And that's just not true in the fourth and fifth film. The sixth film is under development. I hope that they go back to what made the first film great. It doesn't sound like they are, and I'm not really going to get into the details of it here, because, when something's under development, things can still change. So I don't want to talk too much about what it could be, but I hope that they really listen to the fans and they go back to what made this original so great. It is a great film, and no matter what happens in the future, we'll always have this first film. So I hope they do it justice, but if not, we've still got this great film that we can love and enjoy years and years after it's made. Anyways, I'm going to go ahead and bring this review to a close. I appreciate you watching. Please take a moment and rate, comment, and subscribe. And be safe, live well, and go find a movie